you're in the mood for some sprucing up, you're in luck. From big to small or farm to front yard, your Illinois Farm Bureau member discount from John Deere is ready and waiting to help. It's easy to think green when it's the Rewards Loyalty Program with savings on equipment, special parts, and home and workshop products. Whether your tasks involve mowing, planting, or cleaning, you'll be set for whatever your work requires. All you need to do is sign up, have your membership number handy, and go to johndeere.com/Farm Bureau.
When it comes to our members, Chris Magnuson connects rural routes for you. Chris leads Illinois Farm Bureau's efforts to provide valuable information to our members. He has spent 2 decades with IFB. Here's a bit about his rural roots.
I grew up on a farm with corn, soybeans, and Christmas trees. I've been in ag communication for 3 decades now. My greatest satisfaction has always remained the same, to serve our members.
Be it routes or roots, RFD Radio, FarmWeekNow.com, and Farm Week keep you connected.
You're listening to RFD Town and Country Partners, connecting you with the food you eat, the Illinois farmers who grow it, and the food-related events, destinations, and lifestyles that make our state great.
Hey, good day to you. Welcome to Town and Country Partners here on the RFD Radio Network on a sunny Tuesday. I'm Rita Frazier, growing to be one of our favorite guests because he's so informational. He's got so many facts that help us all. Joe Berman is our country financial expert on just about everything retirement. And we were talking about before we went on the air, Joe, is death and dying and preparing for that. There are a lot of things that we all should probably ask ourselves as we prepare.
It is early in the week, Rita, and you are starting off with a lively topic there, right? Everyone's looking forward to this segment.
Right.
But you know, it's not something that we like to talk about all the time, but it is something that families should talk about over time. And there are some really basic documents that everyone should have in place, whether you're young or old. And if you've waited 50, 60 years before you've actually drawn up some of these, there's no better time to start than today to draw those up. So we'll start with some of the core documents that you would want to have. First and foremost, you would want to have a written will. Hopefully something other than just a legal pad, that you've gone with a lawyer or a professional online service to draw that up. The biggest reason to have a written will is certainly you can decide how your assets are distributed. But if you have younger children or minor children or an adult child maybe that's in your care, it's that huge question always of who is going to be the guardian for that child or adult that you're caring for. And most parents choose to set that rather than letting the courts decide who gets to handle the kids. And then there's a few other small documents that also normally accompany the will that you're going to want to have as well.
One of the most powerful things that you shared with me, it makes sense that if you don't have a will, the state will give you one.
Absolutely. So the big word here for today is intestacy. And so if you die without a written will, that's called you're dying intestate. And you would follow the rules of intestacy for your state. Each state has slightly different rules. Here in Illinois, unless your property is passing by a beneficiary designation like life insurance or an IRA or 401k, or by title, so if you and your spouse own something jointly, but if you own something just on your own, half of that passes to the surviving spouse, and the other half passes to the children. So again, going back to a situation, maybe you got married a little later in life, you have a family, and the house is perhaps in mom's name. Mom passes away. Half of the house goes to dad, and the other half go to the minor children, which always causes an issue if you want to refinance. Who's going to sign that paperwork? Who's going to handle that when it goes to be sold? So you want to have some things in place to cover that.
And then you also brought up the fact, and maybe we can transition to another topic, but it kind of all falls under financial literacy. And you tell us that April is National Financial Literacy Awareness Month.
It is. And that was there were some very sobering stats that come out this morning on CNBC about this. Let's start with the good news. So there's 10,000 Americans every day turning age 65. So about every 11 seconds, there's another person turning age 65. So we've got more and more folks that are reaching retirement age and being able to enjoy it. Unfortunately, when we look at that three-legged stool that we always talk about in terms of retirement planning, Social Security, private pension, maybe from an employer, and your own personal savings, in many instances, none of those are great. So the General Accounting Office of the U.S. government says the average Social Security check for a retiree is $14,000 a year. That's hardly a healthy, comfortable retirement. Only 1 in 4 Americans reaching retirement age are expecting to get a pension check from their employer. So now we're down to that shaky third leg of your own personal savings. And again, the GAO reported half of Americans, nearly half, 45% have saved nothing for retirement. But the median account value for those approaching retirement in that 55 to 64 range was a little bit over $100,000. So still, it sounds like a nice nest egg, but that's only about $350 a month of income. So added on to that Social Security check, that's not living high on the hog.
And you also mentioned that most people underestimate the cost of health care, which kind of goes back to long-term health care and all those things. But that's a little scary for all of us to sort of digest.
Yeah. So the always interesting aspect on the health care side is, we, as you mentioned, we're living longer, albeit maybe not as healthy as we'd like. And certainly as you approach those latter years, maybe you're needing a little bit more help in terms of an assisted living facility or some skilled nursing care. Half of Americans, according to the surveys, have not taken in healthcare costs like that into their cost of retirement, saying that they were going to be covered by Medicare for long-term care, which it doesn't provide very much coverage at all. And fewer than 1 in 12 have purchased long-term care coverage. So those are huge, sobering things that we need to address as a company, and each of us certainly in our interactions with our clients.
I don't remember the author or what her book was named, but I remember about where I was at when I was listening to a radio program a few years ago that said, just kind of what you said about we're living longer, but it's not really, you're not at risk really as much if you die. It's the time between your wellness and your death has extended, and that's...
Well, and I talk all the time with our advisors and with clients. I said, we always talk about that worst case, what's perceived as the worst case scenario, and what happens if you die unexpectedly. But I always talk about what if you tragically live, and sometimes you're living a lot longer. And again, you may find you need more care in those latter years. So you really need to account for those things.
Tell us about the Secure Act. That you say could change a lot of things.
So we've talked a lot about some sobering statistics here. We talked about death and dying, but now we're going to talk about actually some good things coming out of Washington these days. And according to every expert out there, they're saying this has bipartisan support. There was a bill that's come out of committee on the House side called the Secure Act. Of course, that's an acronym. Setting every community up for retirement enhancement. There's a similar piece that's come out of the Senate committees called the Retirement Enhancement Savings Act. So these are the first big changes since really about 2006 for any of our retirement savings programs. There's a lot of interesting pieces here. So first and foremost, there are some pieces around small businesses. So there's encouragements for small businesses to provide private retirement plans like a 401k to their employees. They get some a tax credit up to about $500 for setting up a new plan. There are some IRA changes out there, so pushing out IRA distribution rules from the age 70 and a half, where you have to start taking required minimum distributions out to 72, so a little bit longer on that. So if you need to stay working a little longer, 529 plans expanded to homeschooling fees and paying off student loans. So again, education sometimes running into retirement, adding annuities. So that ability to kind of create your own personal pension to a 401k plan. The auto enrollment feature. Many new employees coming into a plan are automatically enrolled in their 401k. It starts off at 2%, keeps ratcheting up to 10%, so they'll expand that up to 15%. And one of the interesting pieces back to the annuities was also in the 401k enhancements for your statements to talk about how much income that lump sum would actually generate. In other words, a $1 million 401k, you sound like you're a millionaire, but that's really only about $40,000 a year of income off of that safely in retirement. So whereas you may be a millionaire, it looks like a lot, it's only $40,000. And when you break that into a month, gosh, that's, on top of Social Security, my other savings, is that going to be enough? So I think it's some good things to put in front of in front of participants and Americans to see how they're doing financially for retirement.
And Joe, this actually goes back to a topic now we've dealt with the past 3 months that we've visited, and that is choose a college well, get a job you love, because the best thing to do is enjoy what you're doing every day. Yeah,
and maybe, consider some hybrid retirements, maybe you continue working a little bit into retirement. If you love what you're doing, you may not want to, it may be okay to work a little bit longer there, or work a little bit part-time along the way.
30 seconds or so, actually 15, but where do folks go for more details?
For more information, you can go out to our website at countryfinancial.com. In the news section, there are lots of good pieces written by some of my staff and myself, as well as on Twitter at Hello Country.
Hello, Country. Joe Berman has been our guest, our financial expert. We appreciate your time and your information. And happy April National Financial Literacy Awareness Month. We'll be back with more Town and Country Partners.
Clean water matters to all of us. For years, farmers have been calling for clean water and clear rules because we know it's possible to have both. Now is the time to make your voice heard. The proposed clean water rule announced by the Environmental Protection Agency and the Army Corps would end years of uncertainty over where federal jurisdiction begins and ends. Support the new rule. Text WATERS to 52886. That's WATERS to 52886. And contact your local county farm bureau for more information.
Farm Week and FarmWeekNow.com journalist Dina Stroish connects rural routes for you. From the Farm Bill to crop insurance to GMO labeling, her expertise is apparent in the stories she reports. Here's a bit about her rural roots.
I get to meet interesting people and share their stories, and I get paid to do it. I cover ag policy and really enjoy keeping the farming community updated on these important issues.
Be it routes or roots, RFD Radio, FarmWeekNow.com, and Farm Week keep you connected.
Welcome to Jim Crowley Outdoors here on the RFD Radio Network, hooking you up with the information you won't have to hunt for. Hey, okay, back again with me today is my buddy Matt Cheever from Heartland Outdoors. He's always got some great tips or great recipes. And you want to talk ground blinds today, don't you?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Jim, a lot of guys think about that stuff the last second. A ground blind's a great last-minute option at times. Pop it up. You see some turkey in this corner of a field, you go pop up a ground blind, brush it in. Same with deer. But if you can think about those spots a little bit ahead of time, you get out in the woods right now, things are flooding, brush moves around, all kinds of stuff happens between now and deer season. And you can do about anything in the woods right now, and you're not going to spook the deer too bad. I mean, they're going to leave and come back. I like to take the tractor out or even the chainsaw and just make some piles. Back some brush up against a spot that you know is good for a wind and leave a little clearing. When you come back at the end of summer, fresh growth will be all grown up around there, and you've got all these logs and this junk and debris behind you. You don't even have to brush the blind in. Pop it up. You've got a bunch of timber behind you, maybe some old logs you can lay around. It almost looks like a small fort like you'd make if you were in the woods as a kid. And just build those up, go back in the fall or even later spring turkey hunt, and you've got a nice little spot to pop up a ground blind.
Yeah, you know what? One of the biggest turkey I ever shot was actually just a really quick throw-together ground blind. We sat down. That Tom came in, had no idea we were there. We did exactly what you said, Matt. We used the backdrop of the surrounding cover. And so what I think is so important is that movement is always going to give you away. You can have almost the wrong camo, but if you've got movement or you're not covered completely, animals like or birds like turkey or like snow geese, things like that, deer specific, sure, they're going to pick you out. You've got to be able to blend in with your backdrop as well as what's around you, don't you?
Oh, exactly. Shades are huge. If you've got a bunch of old, dark, rotten wood you're going to pile up somewhere and you put up a nice light-colored, like an open field type ground blind, it's going to stick out like a sore thumb. And all the brushing in the world is not going to fix the front of it, If you can contrast with the back a little bit and make it look very similar to what's there, a lot of times they'll walk right by it. This is a good time of year to get out and do that stuff. You can really get kind of obtrusive near their home range, especially close to bedding areas, and make some little hidey holes for these ground blinds. And they're going to forget all about that during the summer. And you come back in the fall, your hard work's already done. Takes 5 minutes to pop up the blind, and then the next thing you know, you're set and you're ready for the season. So great time to get out there and do that. And just like everything else, the more you prepare ahead of time, usually the easier and more successful the hunt is. And I agree with you 100%. Awesome. Well, Matt, thanks a lot, buddy, and we will talk to you next week.
Jim Crowley with the Outdoor Program. You can hear more of Jim's program here on the RFD Radio Network. We'll be back on Town & Country Partners.
As you prepare for planting season, remember your neighbors. Whether you're an applicator, grower, or beekeeper, use FieldWatch to register your farm and monitor for sensitive sites around you. FieldWatch is a free, easy-to-use online mapping tool. Consulting FieldWatch is now a requirement for the over-the-top use dicamba products. Communicating with your neighbors will help you protect your farm and the environment. Don't wait. Go online to fieldwatch.com. Growing agriculture, we grow best together.
RFD Radio Network's Rita Frazier connects rural routes for you. Rita delivers passion and reliable information to listeners on the RFD Radio Network. Her radio career spans close to 3 decades. Here's a bit about her rural roots.
I grew up on a small farm. My job today allows me to connect with people from all walks of life and experience opportunity every day. I get to talk about what I love, farming.
Be it routes or roots, RFD Radio, FarmWeekNow.com, and Farm Week keep you connected.
Welcome back to Town & Country Partners Radio. I'm Christina Wilkinson. After you hit 40, it seems like your body starts to work against you. And we've all had these new aches and pains that we just didn't have before. And one thing that we've always associated with growing older is arthritis. Orthopedic Center of Illinois in Springfield, Dr. Carolyn Seneca sees a number of patients suffering from arthritis, especially in one of the major joints.
Knee arthritis is a very common thing I see when people come into my office, and we see young patients as well as older patients come in with it. It's estimated maybe 30 million Americans have arthritis, actually, and it is more common after age 65, but we certainly do see it in younger patients, too, especially with the sports participation.
Now, one thing is, what exactly is arthritis? I mean, you hear the term all the time, but what does it actually mean?
Well, arthritis really, in general, means the loss of cartilage at the joint, a loss of the articular cartilage. It's thinning or wearing out, basically. And there's various types of arthritis, but when we talk about arthritis in general, we're talking about degenerative or wear and tear arthritis is the most common one. I mean, there's other types of arthritis like rheumatoid arthritis, or you can get arthritis after an injury. We call that post-traumatic arthritis. But the wear and tear degenerative is what we see primarily the most.
And then would that be the cause? Is this basic use, and as you grow older, then the more use it's going to deplete?
Yeah, it definitely is multifactorial. So it can be from an injury, an old injury many years ago, and that kind of started the damage to the cartilage. And unfortunately, our cartilage has very poor reparative properties, so it's not good at repairing itself. So once that damage is started, then we can see that arthritis slowly progress over time, unfortunately. It definitely is in older patients, so it is something we see as we age. It's a little more common in ladies. There's even a hereditary component. So sometimes you'll see patients come in and say, yeah, my dad had to have his knees replaced. And so oftentimes we'll see patients at a younger age have arthritis in those instances as well.
Is there any actual cure arthritis?
So as of yet, we don't, as far as we're talking about wear and tear now again, there's medications for rheumatoid arthritis, but we're going to kind of focus on the wear and tear arthritis. There's really no cure, so to speak. So a lot of times when we're dealing with patients in the office, we're trying to help with their symptoms and to lessen those. There's some over-the-counter chondroitin sulfate and glucosamine preparations in various pill forms or liquid forms, and there's not a lot of good scientific studies that show that those make a difference. There's some newer things they're experimental still now, but like platelet-rich plasma, we call PRP, or a lot of people have been coming in and asking about stem cells, and I think definitely there's some promise in those. It's just that they're not clinically available right now in mainstream because they're still kind of working out the details. They're not. We don't have any long-term studies basically on them.
For those kind of treatments, then, what is the process? I mean, is it something that people are in trials, or is it something they can request and just eat the cost themselves?
Yeah, so insurance doesn't pay for it. That's correct. There are clinical trials going on at, major centers, and there's other freestanding places where you can get, just pay out of pocket to get PRP or stem cells. But I think really the jury is out on, we have to figure out which patient deserves which preparation and what stage, and I think we still don't know all that information at this point. So our academy, the American Academy of Orthopedic Surgeons, doesn't recommend we do that in general clinical practice yet, but I think definitely in the future this is going to be something, promising.
Are there any things that people should be aware of that they can do before they figure out they have arthritis to maybe be preventative?
So the things that, we can do for, when we start having some mild arthritis or some mild symptoms is, one thing is exercise is good for arthritis. We're not talking high impact running or jumping, but low impact exercise. Multiple studies show that moderate exercise is actually good for knee arthritis. Also, weight is another problem that we've been encountering a lot. So lots of patients are overweight, and weight loss can definitely help with knee arthritis. 1 pound of weight loss is more like a 4-fold reduction of the joint force, and so it's not even a 1-to-1 relationship. So even 5 or 10 pounds can make a significant difference on the knee, which would be, very beneficial.
You mentioned that you're seeing a lot of more arthritis in younger people, and is that, do you think, attributed? Do you see a lot more kids involved in sports that come away with more serious injuries?
Sometimes it can be sports related because there is some evidence that, an earlier trauma to the knee, a significant trauma, could perhaps cause some arthritis. We see that in our ACL patients. For instance, if a younger patient tears their ACL, even if they have it reconstructed, they do have a higher propensity of developing arthritis. So I think there is some related to sports. I think the obesity epidemic is another thing that's contributed to a lot of that as well. And maybe patients aren't exercising and things as much, doing as much manual labor and exercise as they were before. So I think all those things, it's kind of a multifactorial thing.
So what treatments are available for patients?
So the things we offer here now are, first of all, doing a good physical exam on the patient and going over their x-rays to show them that they have joint space narrowing or bone spurs or things that show us that they have the arthritis. And then we kind of talk about the various treatments, which include medications like anti-inflammatory medications, which can help. Those are your things like, Motrin or Advil over the counter, as well as prescription medications like that. And then we get into injections. We have a couple of injections to do into the knee. One is cortisone, which a lot of people have heard of cortisone injections, but they do dramatically help patients. And then we have what we call viscosupplementation, which is injecting kind of some shock absorption or lubrication into the joint. And a lot of times those are a series of injections that you can get. And both the cortisone and the viscosupplementation can be repeated because there's a certain category of patients that have arthritis, but they're not ready for any type of knee replacement or surgical intervention. And so we're trying to keep those patients going and active as much as we possibly can.
Thank you, Orthopedic Center of Illinois, Dr. Carolyn Seneca. I'm Christina Wilkinson for Town & Country Partners Radio.
Thank you for joining us for RFD Town & Country Partners. Get out and enjoy Illinois.